Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, I'm Kathy Sipple, and I'd like to welcome you to 219 GreenConnect, a show where we explore topics about the environment and green living in Northwest Indiana. For past show archives, news, and upcoming events, please visit our website at 219greenconnect.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter. To make sure you don't miss an episode, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast via iTunes. Today, my guests are Nicole Barker, who is the Executive Director, and Nathan Pavlovic, who is the Land and Advocacy Specialist at Save the Dunes. And we're here to talk about the Enbridge Energy Company and their plans to construct approximately 60 miles of new pipeline for the transportation of tar sands oil through Northwest Indiana. So let's go ahead and turn it over to Nicole and Nathan. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us, Kathy.
Sure.
Just to lead, I wanted to provide a little bit more information about Save the Dunes as an organization. We are this year celebrating our 60th anniversary, and as one of Indiana's oldest environmental groups, our formation largely centered on protection and creation of the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore, which is our state's only major national park here along Lake Michigan. And in the many years following, we've had to, change our approach to protecting the resources of the Indiana Dunes, including fighting off proposals for a nuclear power plant, a jet port in the lake, a freight marshaling yard in the park, and other threats that have come up over the years. And over time, one of the things that we are more keenly focusing on is the pollution that has come in, along with a lot of the industrial development of our region. And in particular, the Enbridge project piqued our interest because it is crossing somewhere on the order of 30 waterways that all flow into Lake Michigan and the Indiana Dunes. And we wanted to make sure that all due diligence is being done to protect those waterways and, of course, to protect public safety as well.
Sure. So that's a great background on Save the Dunes, and I want to just give a little announcement, too. If people want to find out more information about Save the Dunes, I did include a link on our show description, but let's go ahead and give out the website and other ways people can connect with you.
Sure. Our website is www.savedunes.org. There's no "the" in the middle. It's just www.savedunes.org, and we have quite a bit of information on there. We also have a very active Facebook page, which has extremely timely information about the Enbridge project and many other projects impacting the environment in Northwest Indiana, if you just search for Save the Dunes on Facebook.
Great. Well, that's wonderful. So if you can get in there and, retweet if you're on Twitter or Facebook about this issue, we're going to give you some opportunities at the end to tell you how you can attend some public hearing events and get involved if you want to make your voice heard among those concerned about this project. So let's get into what are some of the concerns about the project and just a little bit of background about tar sands oil. Can you describe for us what's different about tar sands oil versus other types of oil?
Right. So as Nicole mentioned, one of the main concerns about this pipeline is simply that it is going to be crossing 30 different streams and rivers in Northwest Indiana. So opportunities for contamination of water either during the construction period or during the operation of the pipeline are a concern. And so we just want to make sure that due diligence is done by the state's regulators to make sure that those resources, which are really very precious to this region, are protected. In terms of the tar sands oil, that's an oil that comes down from Canada, and it's extracted from a sandy deposit of oil. And it's a bit different from standard crude oil because it's a lot heavier than standard crude oil, and it's also more acidic and has a few other properties that kind of make it nastier than your standard hazardous liquid crude oil. One of the issues with crude tar sands, and this is something that they dealt with up in Michigan when the Enbridge caused a spill in the Kalamazoo River in 2010, is that in order to get it to flow through a pipeline, the tar sands are so thick that they have to dilute them with the byproducts from natural gas production. When they do that, that lets it flow through the pipeline. But if there's a spill, that stuff that they've used to dilute the tar sands goes ahead and evaporates. And that returns the tar sands to their sort of natural form, which is sort of almost a clay-like substance, a really dense, heavy material that wouldn't flow through a pipeline. When that happens, unlike standard crude oil, the tar sands actually will sink to the bottom of a river. They'll sink to the bottom of any waterway. And as a result, up in the Kalamazoo River, they've actually had to spend $800 million cleaning up that river because essentially they have to dredge the riverbed. They have to totally dredge up and reconstruct the riverbed up there. And so they're still cleaning that up 2 years later, and so far they've spent $800 million doing it. So making sure that all necessary safety precautions are in place on this line is really important because the effects of a spill going into our waterways would just be absolutely disastrous.
Okay. Well, I won't hold you to this. I don't know. I know you've got a lot of really interesting credentials behind your name. If you can't or don't feel comfortable answering, please just tell me. But what do you think would be adequate safety precautions? I mean, that just seems like a lot of waterways to cross and, a lot of miles that we're talking about. I mean, how big a circumference would the pipeline have to be, or what would be adequate due diligence? I mean, that just seems like an awfully big risk to me, not knowing this topic.
Right. So what we're pushing for at the moment, and we're planning on advocating this for the state of Indiana later this year, is at the moment Indiana doesn't have anything to do with regulating interstate pipelines. So the law distinguishes between interstate and intrastate pipelines. Now, Indiana does have some rules, some inspections that they do for interstate pipelines, so pipelines that just transport oil and gas through within the state. This pipeline, though, is an interstate pipeline, so it's flowing from here in Indiana up into Michigan, and so it's subject to federal regulation. The problem is, federally, there's no review of pipeline siting in terms of environmental regulation. So essentially, if a company can come in and say, we're going to put a pipeline anywhere through the state, and no one in the state of Indiana takes a look at that pipeline in its entirety and says, is this the best option? Is there somewhere else that we can put this pipeline? Is it even a public necessity? So what we're calling for is the state of Indiana to implement rules that will allow the Indiana Utilities Regulation Board, Regulatory Commission, to either, or another body, to oversee the siting decisions that are made around natural gas and oil pipelines, and to make sure that, an environmental impact statement is done, routing alternatives are examined, and, we have adequate oversight. And I think that's what adequate oversight would really look like.
Okay. So let me just understand, too, is this pretty much a foregone conclusion that it's coming? It will go somewhere through Indiana to connect into Michigan? It's just a matter of siting decisions or, other, as you said, environmental impact, studies that could be done that would impact siting or influence siting, but it is coming? Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, according to the company, they were slated to begin Phase 1 this month when we talked to them last, and they were going to complete Phase 1 and Phase 2 by the end of this year, which is extremely fast. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to get involved because, we had heard about a public open house happening in LaPorte back in June. We heard about it the day before by someone calling us from Michigan, and actually I live within a couple miles of the pipeline in LaPorte. So we didn't feel that meeting reached the residents of Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties sufficiently to get all the information into their hands. So one of the things we've been advocating for is a meeting, a larger, broader public forum that would include some of the agencies that are going to be signing off on the pipeline, which would include everyone from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, Indiana DNR, and others. And in some way, it sounds like there's a lot of review and input going into this, but these agencies each have their particular laws or codes or guidelines that they're looking at, but no one's really looking at the pipeline as a whole. And we felt that, we also feel that folks who don't live immediately next to the pipeline ought to be aware of the work happening. Just because they don't have a pipeline crisscrossing their property doesn't mean that they don't have a vested interest in the safety of the pipeline in the long term. And let me point out, too, that the pipe does need to be replaced. So, that's one of the reasons we do know this work will be happening. The line is from, I believe, the 1960s, and it has cracks, corrosion. It's the same pipe that had the spill up in Michigan, so we clearly want to have it replaced. But the question is, should it be replaced with a pipeline that is going to actually be wider, 36 inches rather than 30 inches, and double and potentially triple the quantity of tar sands moving through our region when we don't even know very well how to best clean this material up should a spill occur? The recent report from the NTSB regarding the Michigan spill very blatantly points out multiple issues that were at hand at Enbridge's corporate level, and those of the field and everything, and really said that we don't have a full understanding of how to clean up and deal with this product. And I know further studies are being done at the national level, and it would really be nice to have that information now.
Yeah, that report actually compares Enbridge's response to the spill to the Keystone Cops. Essentially, they were disregarding most of their safety regulations. They allowed this spill to continue for 17 hours before they reacted to it, apparently because they assumed it was a bubble in their line rather than a hole. And federally, there's a lot of question about the tar sands and the effect on pipelines. So the National Science Foundation actually has been contracted to do a report, to do research and write a report on whether or not tar sands are actually more corrosive, whether they cause more spills along their pipelines than standard crude oil. Okay. Those results won't be available for another year, though. So going into this, we may be locking ourselves into pipeline infrastructure that is not adequately protective of safety regulations or public safety, and we may not find that out for another year.
Right. I've got so many questions. I know we have only a half hour, so I'll have to table some of them for the meeting on Thursday. I would like to go ahead and just do a shout-out for that, because you've just mentioned that the last meeting back in June was not as well attended as you would have hoped, partly due to short notice, and here we are again with not a whole lot of notice, but there is a public hearing meeting. Go ahead and tell us the details about the one on Thursday.
Right. So the Indiana Department of Natural Resources has received applications from Enbridge for several of the stream crossings that they're going to be digging up and putting in a pipeline here in northwest Indiana. And as part of that, we, Save the Dunes and Concerned Citizens, requested a hearing on those excavations of stream beds. So this Thursday, August 23rd, 2012, there's going to be a public hearing in Meeting Room B of the Valparaiso Public Library at 4 p.m. There's also going to be another meeting at which Enbridge is going to be presenting its plans for construction next month, so that's the 6th of September, at 9 a.m. at the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, which is located at...
It's at 6100 Southport Road in Portage, Indiana.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not exactly the easiest place to get to if you're not familiar, so it's kind of tucked away up there. I would definitely MapQuest it, and unfortunately not on public transportation, so you might need to carpool if you don't have a vehicle. But I think the Valpo Library is pretty easy to get to via public transportation. And can you tell us, what you would expect to happen at these meetings, and how can people come to support you, to be prepared to, ask intelligent questions? I mean, what are some of the questions that you would pose?
I think for the meeting this Thursday, which is solely focused on the Indiana Department of Natural Resources purview, the Flood Control Act, that hearing will not be about the larger pipeline issue or asking Enbridge particular questions about tar sands. It's more about the actual stream crossings that are happening in all three counties. And some of our questions are going to focus on have they properly identified each and every stream crossing that they are crossing, and have they properly identified which ones are considered salmonid streams, meaning they carry salmon or trout species in our state. Those are more protected waters. We also are going to be asking about the methods they plan to use to cross those waterways. We're hearing that they would like to use open trenching methods, which are, we believe, more disruptive to the ecosystem. And so we'd like to hear the justification for why the DNR feels that it's appropriate or inappropriate, and how they've done their review in terms of protecting the species, the flora and fauna that are in and near those waterways.
Okay, and dumb question, but open trenching, does that mean not buried underground, or what is open trenching exactly?
So what they're going to be doing is essentially digging it. They'll divert the river, so they'll pump the water over the place where the pipe goes through the river. They'll dig out a trench under the river, and by law they're required to be at least 3 feet below the bed of the stream. So they'll put the pipe in, and then cover it up with the 3 feet of stream bed, and then allow the stream to pass back through that. And their plans say they're going to put riprap in there, and and that's considered restoration. So the issue is that it will be buried at the end of it all, but in the meantime they're digging up 30 of our streams, and most of those feed out through Burns Ditch. So there's a direct impact on Salt Creek, East Branch of the Little Cow. They'll even be intersecting with Reynolds Creek over in the very eastern part of Porter County, which is absolutely one of Northwest Indiana's most beautiful streams. It's really very pristine, and it's just when there are other options available, why are they choosing to dig up these stream beds?
Yeah, right. Well, a couple more questions I've got for you, and I'll just ask them both in a row, and then you can respond. But is there a map somewhere online that people can check out to know where this is going? And secondly, I understand it's not really just a matter of not in my backyard, because streams and waterways, as I understand it, are all connected to our various watersheds. So even if it's not in your backyard, it probably impacts the water that you enjoy or depend on in some way. Is that accurate? And the first part about the map.
Yeah, so definitely. There is a national pipeline mapping system which theoretically shows you where the pipeline goes, where the existing pipeline that this new one is going to be following goes. But it's not a very detailed map. Save the Dunes produced a map that shows where the pipeline goes and where the stream crossings are going to be occurring. And so I don't think we have that on our website currently, but we'll post that on our website. So under the news section of our website, we'll have a map posted of all the stream crossings.
Good.
And the general route of the pipeline.
Okay. One more quick thing. This is Nicole. Sure. I wanted to add that DNR has been extremely responsive to our requests for information and data. They've been very kind in that there was a process by which we had to have a petition signed, in essence, to trigger a public hearing. We respectfully requested that they not hold that hearing just for the one waterway we petitioned them under, but for all the waterways in the region, and they were very, very amenable to doing that for us. So we need to say thank you to our partners at DNR.
Good. Always a good idea to thank the people that are trying to at least come to the table and open negotiations or open some points of concession. So, both of these meetings, it sounds like they're going to address different things. You said the Valpo meeting is really more about the streams and the positioning, not asking Enbridge about their specific questions, but the one in September would be more oriented toward that. Is that the correct understanding?
Right. So the one in September, the one that's coming up later this week, that's about impacts on water and water resources.
Okay.
Although through that, any impacts on fish, wildlife, or botanical resources are covered under the Flood Control Act, which is the Indiana statute that under which the DNR controls this construction, or is able to regulate this construction. The one in September, Enbridge is actually planning on presenting to the Environmental Management Policy Committee of NERPC, of the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission. They'll be presenting. So it's not an opportunity per se for the public to provide input, but they will have representatives there. The company will have representatives there. And we think it's going to be a really exciting opportunity to ask questions of them in a relatively well-respected forum. NERPC is a really balanced forum in Northwest Indiana for addressing concerns such as these. So we're excited to sort of have a chance to sit down with the company and with some of the regional decision makers who can have a say in this project.
Good. NERPC has been really wonderful in helping get this set up. I know Kevin Breitsky, who is part of the Environmental Management and Policy Committee, helped get the company to come speak with everyone. And like Nathan said, there's big industry representatives in this committee. There's local towns, municipalities, not-for-profits, agencies, and so forth. So, and this is technically a monthly meeting that occurs no matter what. So it's really on the agenda of this normally occurring meeting. So there may be other items on the agenda as well. But I do believe they have cleared most of the hour-and-a-half session for this purpose, which is just incredibly generous and kind of them.
Okay, and just on a side note, I would like to throw this out just because this is something I'm personally involved in, but I was asked to be a representative on NERPC's task force for public outreach and inclusion. So they are actually looking at how can we get public input on not just this issue, but every issue that comes up. How can you get to all 700,000 plus people in the area that they serve and get their opinions weighed in on? And I'm trying to use social media to do my part, but if you've got ideas, listeners, or if you've got ideas, Nicole and Nathan, I'd really like to hear about how we can be more effective to activate and get the word out. So I know everybody's busy these days. Everybody's got challenges with work lives and family commitments, and we're trying to be green and not drive everywhere. So I'm looking for opportunities where people can become, 5-minute activists. If you can click here, share this, do this, listen to a podcast, weigh in on something. We can't all be everywhere, but how can we make the most of our time, energy, and talents to get our voices heard? So if you've got ideas about this particular, issue, certainly I'd like to know about that, but that is an issue I'm just interested in exploring in the larger realm as well. So hopefully people can make it to one or both of these meetings. Is there anything else they could do to support, the fact that you are turning attention to this and asking for, appropriate environmental impact statements to be done?
So one of the public hearing that's currently happening is on an application which is open for public comment. So going to the DNR's website and commenting on those documents is one way that people could, just providing feedback, make sure that all of the streams aren't dug up or, something along those lines would be really great. Also, there's a permit out for public comment currently through the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, IDEM, and they are looking at wetland impacts of this pipeline. So that's another opportunity for public comment to just, people can submit documents to the agency expressing their concerns.
We can post those to our website, too. So, and, don't be daunted. I mean, that's an important message. Don't be daunted because it's a government agency. And when you send comments in, be yourself. Ask exactly what you'd like to ask or state exactly what you'd like to state. And it becomes part of the public record, and they are required to consider your thoughts. So, people of all ages can actually send in comments and thoughts as well.
That would be great, and I think that's a great point. Is instead of just referencing the IDEM website that many listeners might not be real familiar with, or they might not have that website on hand, if we can create links that take them directly to the place that gives them the opportunity to comment, that's just us helping them make a bigger impact. So if you can put that on your website, if you can put that on Facebook, I'll absolutely repeat it and would be happy to append the show description with those links as well. So
I would also say, Kathy,
sure.
In sort of a broader concerns in the region, we send out a monthly e-news, and anyone can go to our website and subscribe to that e-news. And each month we include a take action section that usually includes links to places that people can provide comments to local decision makers, state decision makers, and on national issues. So that's another great resource to reach people or to reach more broad concerns, I think, over the long term.
Great. And then, of course, Save the Dunes is concerned about this issue as well as many, many others that you're, keeping an eye out on. And so, obviously you could probably use support for the other land and water programs that you are behind. So I do want to at least give a little shout out where you can support their efforts on the Save the Dunes website. And, you can attend some fundraisers. I know Nathan mentioned one last week at Green Drinks, and I don't want to take it off topic, but it is related in my opinion. If we go to these fundraisers and we support this actually very fun-sounding event, it helps Save the Dunes stay informed and have the manpower to attend these meetings and educate us about these types of issues. Do you want to say a few words about your event coming up in September?
Sure. We have it's our second annual Jammin' for the Dunes music festival at Washington Park in Michigan City at the JC stage. It's on Saturday, September 8th, starting at, I think it's at noon or 1 p.m. We're going to look at that and double-check that quick. 4 p.m., and it goes until about 10 p.m., I believe. And there are several local beer vendors, including Shoreline Brewery, and food vendors as well. We have let's see here. I'm just going to grab my list, make sure I don't miss anybody. So in addition to Shoreline Brewery, we have Bulldog Brewery from Whiting and Four Horsemen from South Bend. We also have various food entities. I'm hearing there's going to be some great taco stations and all kinds of goodies. It's $10 a ticket. You can buy tickets in advance through a board member or a staff person at Save the Dunes, or you can come the day of. But it's a really good time to hang out outdoors right next to the dunes. You can take a little walk down to the beach if you'd like to see the dunes, and it's a great way for us to celebrate our 60th anniversary. The other event that we have is our 60th anniversary gala, and that is on Saturday, October 27th at 6 p.m. at Sand Creek Country Club in Chesterton, and that's a bit more elegant of an affair. Our keynote speaker there will be Henry Henderson, who is the Midwest Director of the Natural Resources Defense Council, who's been our friend and ally in so many wonderful projects in the region. And we are beyond excited to celebrate our anniversary that day. And I appreciate, Kathy, you encouraging folks to support us. I think some of the hardest stuff for our organization to fund is our advocacy work, because there's not a lot of grant programs and other foundation opportunities to support that. So we really rely heavily on donors to get this type of work done, and it's time-consuming.
Yeah, and you, beside your events, you are membership-driven, and so there is a place on your site where you can look at different membership levels. So if this kind of work really speaks to you and you'd like to support it in a deeper way, please check that out. So again, the website is www.savedunes.org, and you can go ahead and check out, the history. You can check out some of these events. Education programs. As Nathan said, you can subscribe to the newsletter so that you can get all kinds of updates from Save the Dunes. And I try with 219 GreenConnect to go ahead and repost your stuff wherever I can. And just want to say, from a personal standpoint, I really enjoyed your Greening the Yard workshop that you did in the spring. I thought that was tremendous and really educational for how important it is to look at being a steward of your own property, what you do in your own yard, and how that contributes, to our waterways and watershed. So, and you've also been speakers at Green Drinks, which is a monthly event that I host here in Valparaiso. So, really helped inform people throughout Northwest Indiana in a lot of ways. So I know we're just about at the end of our time. So what I'd like to do is, if you're just joining us, you can listen to this whole show in its entirety. It'll be archived at our website, which you can get to at www.219greenconnect.com, or you can subscribe on iTunes and listen to this podcast as well as back episodes. We're trying to drive awareness about several public meetings that are coming up that will be exploring this Enbridge Energy tar sands pipeline that is coming through Northwest Indiana, will be rebuilt, and just trying to get public awareness about due diligence that needs to be looked at for environmental impact. So the meeting that's coming up is Thursday, August 23rd, and that'll be at the Valparaiso Public Library downtown. You can find out information for that on the savedunes.org website. And I want to thank my guest again, Nicole Barker, Executive Director at Save the Dunes, and Nathan, who is Land and Water Advocacy Specialist at the Save the Dunes organization. They do great work. So thank you. This is the end of this episode of 219 GreenConnect. Thanks, and join us back next time.